A bait crisis is unfolding across South Florida. This is not a rumor. This is a Pilchard supply disruption in motion. From Miami to Monroe Island, livewell tanks are running low as net after net comes up clean within casting range. In Monroe County, bait shops and guides report Pilchard availability down as much as 60–70% versus early October. Guides are calling suppliers at 4 a.m. and getting no answer. The pressure is immediate, and it's already building beyond South Florida. What pushed the region's most reliable bait fish off the inshore zone? And what happens when the live bait economy starts to buckle under shortage-level strain? The numbers confirm a real disruption. Northeast winds have held 20 to 25 knots for nearly a week. Sea surface temperatures along the lower Atlantic shelf are down 3 degrees, from 84 degrees Fahrenheit to 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Water clarity in Biscayne Bay is barely 2 feet. The combination is pushing bait deeper and offshore, beyond cast net range. NOAA imagery from October 20 shows sediment plumes from Government Cut south through Elliott Key. FWC field notes indicate mild salinity inversion and plankton bloom activity inside Card Sound. Every factor points to disruption. Not disappearance, but the timing is brutal. In Miami-Dade and Broward, guides who rely on live pilchards for snook, tarpon, and kingfish are burning fuel to find what used to take 10 minutes at sunrise. "You might get 20 a throw if you're lucky," says one charter captain out of Howlover. The bait's just not there inside the bay. Bait shops along the Miami River report inventories down to a few hundred pieces by noon, with prices jumping this morning from around $30 to near $50 per dozen. Supply runs from the upper Keys that normally go twice a day have dropped to a single evening run, if at all. By late week, reports from the Florida Keys show the same trend. Around Marathon, early morning winds gusting 28 knots have shredded clarity. Flats that held pilchards last month now shimmer with glass minnows and pinfish instead. Charter captains are moving offshore to patch reefs, where bait balls linger around structure in 40 to 60 feet of water. But for many small boat guides, that's not an option. Fuel costs and time constraints make deep runs impractical on half-day trips. The West Coast is catching fallout. Across the 10,000 islands and Chokoloskee, the same northeast pattern has held water low and pushed inshore salinity above normal, with some station readings near 38 ppt. Threadfin herring remain patchy offshore, but inside, pilchards appear largely scattered from common inshore spots. Naples and Monroe bait dealers report delivery delays of up to 48 hours. Some have begun importing from Tampa Bay, where pilchard schools appear to be holding around the Skyway Bridge and Egmont Channel, but transport costs are pushing retail prices higher. Those low-water mornings are exposing long stretches of flats and draining the usual choke points where net crews stage their throws. Guides who counted on a quick pre-dawn bait run are now burning an extra hour probing passes and deeper cuts, only to find mixed pods of glass minnows and pinfish where pilchards typically stack. The scattered schools do pop up over shell and along windward seawalls, but they're flighty up 1 minute, gone the next, forcing small boats to chase slicks instead of setting up for clients. Inside the shops, the math is just as unforgiving. With Naples and Monroe deliveries slipping, a day or two operators are rationing bags and limiting per-customer quantities to stretch inventory through weekend charters. Retail tags have crept upward to cover fuel, ice, and driver time on the Tampa runs. And even then, supply is lumpy. A strong tide at the Skyway means phones light up. A dead tide means empty tanks and refund calls. Some captains are hedging with threadfin when they can find it offshore, but patchy schools and choppy conditions keep that option unreliable for half-day trips. The ripple is already changing playbooks. More boats are pivoting to artificials early, small paddle tails, jigs, and spoons, then switching to cut bait when the sun gets high. Others are idling farther south, gambling on clearer pockets tucked behind mangrove points where salinity relaxes a touch. A few have started coordinating group buys. 2 or 3 guides split a single Tampa haul to blunt the transport hit, timing pickups around tide windows at the bridge and Egmont Channel. If the northeast flow hangs on, expect the inshore reset to take time. Pilchards will come back to the usual edges once water levels normalize and salinity eases off that near 3.8 ppt mark. But until then, the pattern favors deeper structure, moving current, and crews willing to adapt. For customers, the advice is simple: book early, be flexible on departure times, and don't be surprised if today's livewell looks different from last month's. In Lee County, Cape Coral's live bait operations are feeling the strain. Every truck that comes down here gets cleaned out in an hour, says a Fort Myers tackle shop owner. We've never seen this much demand for so little bait. Snook season pressure is amplifying it. Anglers chasing slot fish across Pine Island Sound are competing for a bait supply that can't recover in these wind and clarity conditions. Shops are instituting limits 1 or 2 dozen per customer and moving to call-ahead lists that fill before sunrise. By mid-morning, many tanks are either empty or down to mixed-size leftovers. The few wholesalers who can still stage consistent deliveries are charging fuel surcharges and asking for flexible windows. A missed tide or a surprise squall means the entire day's supply slips a tide cycle. Weekend traffic makes it worse. Charter captains trying to cover 2 trips a day are arriving to bare tanks and pivoting to artificials just to get clients on the water. On the water, the pattern is forcing playbook changes. Guides are leaning on shrimp, pinfish, and cut mullet when pilchards don't materialize. Then slow-rolling paddletails and bucktails along windward edges where bait would typically stack. Sight fishing is tough tea-stained water and persistent chop hide the tells. So many are treating ambush points like winter structure, current seams, the shadow lines under docks, and deeper troughs along mangrove points. The bite windows, when they open, are short and unforgiving. Miss the turn of the tide and you're grinding. Pressure on snook is driving crowding in the few zones where water clarity survives the blow. That concentrates casts, spooks fish early, and pushes more boats into secondary spots that aren't replenishing with fresh bait. Reports of slot fish moving deeper into the soundtrack with the higher salinity readings. Fish are riding the edges of cleaner water and feeding in brief flurries on whatever's available. It's producing odd catches too, more bycatch of ladyfish and jacks on baits meant for snook, another sign the food chain is in shuffle mode. Economically, the ripple is immediate. Half-day charters are burning an extra 45-60 minutes securing whatever live options remain, which means less rod time and tighter tips for mates. Tackle shops are selling through cast nets, sabiki rigs, and scent additives, as anglers try to make artificials compete with scarce live bait. A few Cape Coral operators have started pooling runs, 2 or 3 captains splitting a single wholesale pickup to smooth the cost spikes and keep afternoon trips viable. If the northeast wind pattern holds, recovery won't be a single tide fix. It'll take a stretch of stable water levels and improved clarity for pilchard schools to reform, and for local tanks to catch up. Until then, expectation management is the name of the game. Book earlier, be flexible on departure, and don't blink when prices inch up because every mile to find bait is showing up on the tag. The economic feedback loop is accelerating. Guides who cancel morning trips lose not just revenue but repeat clients. Marinas lose fuel sales. Restaurants along the dock lose lunch rush. One pilchard problem becomes a tourism problem within days. And the longer the northeast fetch holds, the more likely this shortage expands up the coast. NOAA's 5-day marine forecast offers little relief. Persistent NE 1525 KT through the weekend. Seas building to 5 feet offshore. Only Monday shows a potential shift to east-southeast at 1015 KT, barely enough to settle turbidity. If that window holds, bait could reappear inside the bays by late next week. But for now, most early morning net throws across Miami-Dade, Monroe, and Collier counties show the same pattern: more mud, fewer flashes, and bait shops running on fumes. What comes next depends on the wind. If the pattern breaks, pilchard schools could push back toward inlets within days. If not, South Florida enters November with its bait economy under pressure, guides rationing live wells, and anglers waiting in parking lots for deliveries that often won't arrive on time. Marinas, guides, and bait suppliers across the region are watching the pattern. The pilchard shortage is ongoing and likely expanding. In the short term, Operations hinge on tide timing and micro windows of clarity. A half-knot swing in current or a brief lull in the chop can be the difference between loading a tank and burning an hour. If the northeast flow lingers, expect more boats to hedge with threadfin, pinfish, and shrimp, and to lean harder on artificials during first light. Group hauls 2 or 3 captains. Splitting a single pickup will become standard practice, and call-ahead lists at bait shops will fill a day in advance. If a frontal reset finally knocks down the wind and settles water levels, pilchards should reform on edges, windward seawalls, channel bends with moving water, and the first shoals outside the passes. Recovery won't be instant. Shops will still be catching up on back orders, and prices won't soften until transport runs shorten and tanks stay full through multiple tide cycles. A faster rebound is most likely where structure concentrates flow, bridge spans, rock edges, and points that sift bait onto predictable lines. If the pattern doesn't break, November starts with triage. Guides will ration live baits per angler, pivot to cut options after the first bite window, and tighten trip plans around the single best tide instead of stretching across 2 mediocre ones. Shops will enforce limits, add fuel surcharges, and shift staff to early delivery windows. Expect more, sold out by 9 a.m., signs, longer holdovers in parking lots, and a noticeable tilt toward lures, paddle tails, bucktails, and spoons doing the work pilchards usually do. Either way, communication becomes the difference between a decent day and a wasted one. Captains who text clients the night before with tide pics and bait status will save time at the dock. Shops that post real-time tank levels and delivery ETAs will control the rush. Until the wind lets go or the schools push back inside, the smart play is simple. Book earlier, stay flexible on departure, and plan for Plan B.